dream, isn't it?
Yes.
To be surrounded around the books and research too with the computers, of course.
Well, you work for it, honesty, consistency, and transparency.
Oh yeah.
It's nice. I like the picture frames.
These are actually from Uppsala in Sweden, where they have the Nordic Bible, and the Nordic Bible is only four. What's it called? The four Gospels.
Yeah.
That's all it was, and then later it became something else. The Bible.
Yeah. It all changes over time.
So
Simplified.
my trip to Uppsala, that made me realize that the Bible is at least a very misleading historical cornerstone. At worst, it's a scam, really.
You have to tell me more. What makes you think that?
Well, it's a bit like with Tartaria. The Vikings went down all the rivers. They weren't called Vikings. That's also nonsense. But these Nordic people on boats, they went down the rivers of Don, Volga, and down through Ukraine as well. Mostly for trading, but of course also to subjecting people that wouldn't trade easily. And the whole story about the Vikings is wrong, and it is actually coming clean these days. And we also know that the Ostrogoth and the Visigoth of ancient times, those who
you see, this is an area of history that I've not looked into too much, so I'm not too well versed, one could say.
The Goths took over from the Roman Empire, and they
Right, okay.
were in Ravenna, calling themselves kings or emperors. First it was the Vandals, and then it was the Goths. And
So what period is this? About what, the 13th century?
no, this is when the Roman Empire fell apart in the 5th century.
I don't say I missed that though.
So if you put that together with the fact that in Rome, the Pantheon is made with cement, with the glue that puts the stone together.
Yeah.
And it's exactly the same building style of Charlemagne's castle in Aachen in Germany, which were something like 700 later, but they're built by the same builders, or at least the builders that had the same knowledge of building. And that was apparently forgotten for several hundred years. That's historical impossibility.
It's not very plausible, is it, really? And the architecture is what first got me interested in all this. So I've noticed, being an Englishman, living in England all my life, about Tartaria or anything like that. I was just young. But walking through many English towns, you'd see like a grid, a metal grid on the pavement, and then you look through the grid and there'd be a window or a door under the floor. And I always thought to myself, what on earth is that doing there? Why would I never thought anything untoward at the time? It was just something I wondered about. But why would there be a window under the ground looking at nothing? Why would you build it like that? So I think my curiosity much sense to me. And then as I grew up, and then I've learned about Tartaria, I heard the theory with the Tartarians that built all the buildings. I mean, I've not found any evidence of that, but I still, when you look into some of these buildings around the world, a lot of them in America, like we discussed last time, Flemming, it seems America just in the 1700s, just poof, within 100 years, we've got a stone metropolis built. And it's just, quite frankly, it's just doesn't. You've got buildings in America that look like they belong in Rome, but there's no connection in these two, supposedly. They were just inspired, but they're made out of the same stone, and they're one-to-one exact replicas. And, I mean, that must be an incredible talent to be able to pull off if you can identically replicate that across continent. In the 1700s, bear in mind, there's no internet, there's no schematics you can get up there, there's no planes, there's no quick travel. To travel from America to Europe in more than a few days. So what's the word I'm looking for? The exchange of knowledge required to make it possible to build these things, one-to-one scale, accurate, same stone, everything the same. It just doesn't make sense. But they managed to do it in 100 years and construct America. It don't make sense. But there's buildings in the Middle East that look the same as buildings in North America. You know, that look the same as England. You know, I mean, you could say British colonization there, but the point is, there's buildings that look remarkably similar in every corner of the world, as if they were built by the same civilization. But our history, that isn't true, apparently. We've just been inspired all over the world to create one-to-one replicas of these buildings out of the exact same materials.
Always the Western civilization and the Roman base of the Western civilization that come out strongest in the story time.
Yeah, the
are
Romans seem to be the pinnacle of it all, don't they? But they were defeated by nomads, apparently. How does that work, Flemming? So they managed to take over the known world, constructing the most glorious metropolises across Europe, everywhere, inspiring America to copy them. They were defeated by some nomads. I mean, when you look at the given narrative, does that make sense to you? Doesn't make much sense to me.
Doesn't. And when you think, you mentioned Britain, when you think that Britain has been controlled since the early 20th century, in the start of the 1900 and around 1900 and zero, you know what I mean, 1910. That's when the Fabian society made those political ideologies that has been controlling Europe and the Western world and now the rest of the world, more or less since then. And the name they take on, Fabius, was that exact Roman general that conquered Hannibal, which is, of course, the great general of the Phoenicians that went all the way up through Spain, what's known as Spain today, France, and down deep into Italy before Fabius conquered him. He conquered him without confronting him. He conquered him by wearing him out, by by stealth, by making a war.
Yeah, they've got a specific phrase, haven't they? I can't remember what it is now.
It's wolf in sheep's clothes. That's what they are, and that's what their logo is as well. And that comes from all the Cecil Rhodes, Milner Group, of course, Diamond and Gold in South Africa, apartheid as well as a result of these secret societies.
The more you look into it, the more you can see how a lot of worldly events have been influenced.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Anyway, we are. It's 7:10 in your place, 8:10 here in my place in Denmark. We are having a program. We are looking an agenda. We're looking closer at something called TARTARIA. And I don't think I could have anyone better to interview on this subject than you, Jordan. Just before I introduce you, I just want to say that I've been testing Substack more or less the whole day and trying it out. However, there is still some child diseases with Substack live functions. That means that the chat might not work as it should be, and it means also that if any of the participants are getting thrown off or for some reason is getting lost in this live video, they should try and message me through the Substack message function, and I will invite them back in again. They can't automatically just use the link one more. You can't automatically just use the link one more time. So um, so that's a bit of a difficulty with. I hope that the chat will work all through the video, because I like when it gets a bit interactive, and I can see all there's already Mamsa has made a comment here. Wow, Jordan is a real person, because I was like that, Jordan, before we had our first.
Yeah, I am real.
Yeah, you are. Yeah. So please use the chat. Also, before we start, I mentioned to you, Jordan, that some people donate equipment to me. That very beautiful lamp right here is actually designed by one of the people who's in the audience right now, and I'm so thankful for it, because that's a real nice touch to this makeshift studio. This is the first time I'm actually using the studio like this for a live session, so I'm very thankful, and I know Jordan is as well. Very thankful for anybody who donates and help uh, these amateur historians, revisionist historians like Jordan and myself, and we will get on with the job no matter what. But we are very thankful when we get help to this job by donations. But most of all, the contributions you make. I like it when you say it like that, Jordan, and you usually do that in your post. The best thing you can offer here is your presence.
Yeah, just read it. That's all I ask.
And spread it.
If you want to donate, you can, but you don't have to. Just read it. That's why they're all for free at the beginning.
So, Jordan, I'm so impressed. I'm also envious of the enormous focus, dedication, and not to say the least, productivity that you are putting into your work, documenting the largest known empire in the history of the world, or at least in this era since.
Yeah, it seems that way. Yeah, larger than the British Empire. I just find it incredibly fascinating, because the more I look into it, the more things I find. But none of these things are like just normal things, like the Tartarian biscuits I shared. It might sound like a small minor thing. To travel across the full continent with barely any weight attached to them. And I mean, that is one of the key features of them being able to take over so much land so quickly, because they didn't need to stop to find food. They didn't need to raid a city for food. They had it all on them. And that's just what I found this morning. But it's just such a vast, wide tapestry of so much interest. Certain things you read about and you're like, I've heard something similar to that. And it's almost like a lot of these historic feats attributed to Tartaria have influenced the modern narrative in the way of what we receive, but without Tartaria attached to it. So we get told little bits of the truth, but without the true characters who were attached to that truth, you know? So it's, in some ways, corroborates Tartaria because it's describing the events they did, but just not naming them, if you understand what I'm getting at. Obviously, the modern narrative doesn't have anywhere near the amount of detail, and it's pretty vague in terms of the description. It doesn't tell you much information in terms of the actual history. I mean, it just Tartars were Mongols, pretty much. Case closed. Don't look into it. But you look into it, people told me, they said, if you look at the history books, then you'll see Tartaria were never a real place. And I mean, I look in the historical archive every day, all day in my spare time, and I'm never stuck for things to find. You know, I've been doing this now, not just on Substack, because I previously used to write about what I find on Facebook. So it's been about 2 years now. And at no point in that 2 year period have I ever struggled to find something to learn about, to read about, to write about. It's abundant. It's I do it all day. I do it all day. You know, any spare minute I get, like today, I mentioned to you before the article I wrote this morning. I've been at work today. I'm in my spare time at work and in my breaks. I managed to write it up, and the first one I posted while I'm at work. This is how seriously I take it. You know,
You
I'm
do
at
too.
work, but I'm doing this as well. You know, and the point I want to highlight is, like I said, at no point have I had any lack of things to write about. It's everywhere. Looking about Tartaria, say I want to look at giants or dragons or strange creatures from the past. I'll be reading about it, and it will be found in Tartaria, and it's like, what? I'm not even looking for it, and it's here, you know. And I'm sure some of the watchers who have done some research themselves can can agree with that reality. You don't even really need to look for it. As long as you're looking at books older than the 18th century or the 18th century and older, you're gonna find it whether you're looking for it or not. It's everywhere.
And today we are having on the agenda to look at the timeline or the approximate timeline of Tartaria.
Yeah,
We are going to look at the extent of Tartaria, what the old maps tell us, what we know today of the extent of Tartary. We are going to talk about all the documenting, all the documents, all the proofs that uh, are present and at hand for us. And you're very
yeah,
good at finding all those documents, which documents this historical vast empire called Tartary or Tartaria. And then at the end, we hopefully have some time as well for the Judean or the
yeah.
Israelite Tartarian connection, because it's there.
There's so
So,
much to it, and the Israelite connection, to me, that has so much importance now, you know, in the relationship to the current global affairs. Anyway, we'll get to that. We'll get
yeah,
to that. I'll let
it's
you lead the way.
certainly has. Yeah. So the timeline. We talked a bit before we went online here about that it probably goes further back than most people can imagine.
Yeah.
But at
It
least
goes further back than I imagined.
we have something like 5, 6, 700 or 7 centuries where we have documenting proof of Tartary. So, Jordan, according to the documents that you um, scoop up and research and study, when do we first hear about Tartaria in the history books?
Well, the research, it seems to be around 1250. We st- we start reading about the Tartars entering the continent of Asia. and defeating the Roman Empire and just taking over all of Asia around 1250. But as we were discussing before, in relation to the Great Wall of China, so the historical record of pre-18th century books in relation to Chinese history states that the wall was built to defend against the Tartars. From a book from the 1700s, to give you a reference here. And in the said book, it says that the wall was built 1500 years ago. So if it were built to defend against the Tartars, and it were built 1500 years ago in 1700s, that would mean it was 200 AD. So if the Tartars were attacking China in 200 AD, then they were already a formidable force, because look at the size of the wall they've built. It's not a small wall. This is a wonder of the world. Constructed over 9 centuries, I believe, if I'm correct there. And all the history books that aren't modern say it were there to defend against the Tartars. So like I just said, if it were built 1500 years ago to defend against the Tartars, and that were written in the 1700s, then that would mean the Tartars were there in 200 AD. So then that adds a bit more credence to the Israelites in these people in that period of time, you know? I haven't got much more to go and place them that early in time, other than when you think about the wall and the history tied to it. Because you're not going to find a book that old. If there is books that old, they are not available to us, because I've searched high and low. And the oldest books I can usually really find that are usable and legible, like 1100, 1200. Anything before that, not a great deal about.
Do you know this ancient wave that came from, excuse me, came from the east, which actually toppled, ending up topple the Western Roman Empire? That is very similar in so many ways to.
That's what I was alluding to before, you know? They tell you a little bit of the truth, but they're missing the characters. And the lie, you know? And that's, you know, through the world. That's the goal. That's all I want to know. I just want an honest look at who we are and where do we come from. And if there's a big civilization that were there and prominent, and by all accounts were worldly and graceful, but very strict. I mean, I'm painting it out to be a utopia. I mean, the penalty for many infractions was death. You know, it wasn't perfect. You couldn't do whatever you wanted. Anyway, I digress. I can't have lost my train of thought now. I was talking.
If I mention Attila the Hun, do you know in which approximate time frame to put that in?
Do you know what? There is a book in my personal collection that mentions Attila and the Hun and Tartary in the same sentence. Now it's been a few months since I've read it, so I won't be able to recite that one. I'll dig it out though, and I'll put it on my page.
So the Roman Empire is toppled by the Huns, and the Goth takes advantage of this from these Nordic Goths, basically Vikings. There's no such thing as Viking, but it's nice. We have museums here in Denmark, so we make a good income on calling it the Vikings. So these Goths, which were very intimately related to the Vikings, they took over after the Huns had totally weakened the Roman Empire. The Vandals conquered Italy, and then afterwards the Goths took over in Ravenna and made and ruled the rest of the Roman Empire, or Italy, at that time, from Ravenna in Italy, just south of Venice.
Yeah.
Phoenicia, I nearly said, but yeah, it's called Venice, but very related word to Phoenicia. Anyway, so we got an overlap here. Some people in the chat mentioned Fomenko. Also, I have studied, or I forgot his name now, as well. There's historians that can document that we are missing something like 700 to 1,000 years since Jesus apparently walked on this earth, and if that is true, and that's also, like I mentioned to you before we went on here, I said about Aachen in Germany, where this castle was built exactly with the same sort of materials and the same builders, the same dire work when they work with the metals, building a very big door gate in Aachen, and it was only the Romans that had this knowledge of building this way, and then you got 700 or at least 400 later. They built something very similar in Aachen in Germany, and it's been forgotten how to build like that for hundreds of years at this time. There's things that just doesn't add up in.
No, and there's a point I think about in relation to the Romans. So we're told that they had the best aqueduct sewage system in the world at the time. Still impressive by today's standards, so we believe. But then we go to 18th century Britain, and everyone's chucking the poo out the window. Everyone's sick. Everyone's poorly. The plague, whatever the truth is about the plague, because that's another resting onto a load of different subjects here. But my point is, how do you go from Roman level of sewage infrastructure and cleanliness to fast forward advancement in years? So you'd think, as we're told, we'd advance positively upward. But we fast forward, and like I said, people are pooing and weeing in buckets and chucking it out the window. So what happened? It's very strange and very interesting. I don't have a good answer for that.
Something fishy about the architecture all over the world in that respect. So we got apparently Tartary spanning from the 13th century to something approximating our modern times, because
I'd say the mid 19th century was around that period. You don't see it past about 1800. You don't really see it on the maps anymore. So that's a good point around there. But there's a World Fair. So I haven't shared this. Reminded me. It's a blueprint of the World Fair. I can't remember what state it's in. And it's of the stalls from the different countries around the world. And on one of the stalls, it says Chinese Tartary. And that document is from 1880. That's the most recent document I've ever seen. So that's just at the brink of the 20th century. And then once properly, you don't see it in the historical record, you don't see it on the maps, but you start seeing it in the CIA files. What the hell's going on? You know what I mean? And it's not just the CIA files, it's the NSA files, it's the Freemason Library, it's the Royal Society archives. The list goes on, Just give me another few months and the list will be double, I'm sure.
It's the Jesuits, which were the academics of this time as well. Back in since the Reformation, the Jesuits really took over academia in Europe, and they were the knowledgeable people to send on missions to gather intelligence. And recently, you gave a very good account in one of your posts about a Jesuit that came back with news of Tartary.
There's been a few Jesuit travellers that have wrote about their journeys into Tartary, and it is quite interesting that it's noted in a few unrelated sources that when the Tartars took over China, they banished the Jesuits and the Christian missionaries. But the Jesuit is the main focus there. Now, why would they banish the Jesuits? And why were the Jesuits so interested in going? So it's interesting.
And why were it's mostly or a lot of Jewish influence in around Ignatius Loyola when he, with commission from the Pope, eventually built the Jesuits. The Jesuits became the models of these Rhodesians, Milner groups, secret societies, of course, Fabian Society, Chatham House, Council on Foreign Relations. It was these secret societies.
So many. The list goes on.
Semi-secret societies as well. They were built on this Jesuit way of organizing. And eventually Hitler, he built, I think it was Schutzstaffel SS, was built on the same Jesuit hierarchy, or with that in the back of the mind of building up this organization.
Well, same with Freemasonry. I mean, the Jesuit influence there.
They took over.
And then, like, in the Freemason magazine, April 14th, I won't be able to remember the year off the top of my head. It's April 14th, though. Might be 1967. Don't quote me on that. But the Freemason magazine, in that issue, says the objective of... Oh, my God. I'm not going to say I'm going to have it verbatim, but it basically says the goal of this organization is to politically overthrow the Tartars. I've written about it in a few articles because it just says it, That's what it said. The goal of this organization is to politically overthrow the Tartars and then create mutually protective associations. But that's what it says in the Freemason magazine in the 60s. How else can you interpret that? What else does that mean? And this is the way I look at many things in this area of research. What else could it mean? And in many cases, Flemming, people tell me that all these old authors are confused. They didn't mean Tartaria. They didn't know what they were talking about. But to believe that is more fantastical. To believe it existed. For me to believe that thousands and thousands of people, and I've no doubt that it's thousands, over 1,000 years, potentially. I know it's at least 700 years. So all these people, over nearly a millennium, all supposedly visited this place, and they still got it wrong. I shared a letter recently, and the letter, the man who wrote the letter was writing it while he was in Tartary. So you'd have to believe that this man was in Asia, documenting the people who were showing him round and what he's seeing, but he's got who they are wrong. It just, you know what I mean? It just doesn't make any sense. Like, just the common sense of it from the get-go. I asked people, the people that disagree it was a real place, I said, right, find an 18th century book or older that corroborates the modern narrative. If it's true, there should be an abundance of books that prove it's true.
It's true.
No one has done it yet, Flemming. No one has been able to complete my challenge to find a pre-18th century book that proves the modern narrative, because there isn't any. Back then, there was no conspiracy whether Tartaria were real or not. They were just writing about the world as it was. Why would they make this up? Why would they make up or get confused about a major power in the East while traveling to the East, speaking to them, getting their opinions, reading their books, taking their herbal knowledge, ginseng,
Jensen.
and describing the history of this knowledge, saying it's Tartarian, saying that there's a good relationship with the Tartars and the Chinese. I mean, it just silly.
What could the motive possibly be of making up dynasties in China, making up emperors
Yeah,
in Rome, making up a lot of duplicates?
it's the greatest hoax in the history of mankind. For what purpose? I don't know. You know, why would you? Why would that? Why? Why would that even be? And it just doesn't make any sense that this could be the greatest hoax ever over a 1,000-year period, potentially even longer. Like we were talking about the Great Wall. If, as noted in many 18th century books, the wall were built to defend against the Tartars, and it was built 1,500 years ago, that would be 200 AD. So that's nearly over 1,500 years. This greatest hoax has been claimed. And I mean, why would you make up that the wall were to defend against the Tartars if it weren't? Fighting anyone.
The Chinese wall is one great example of something not really making sense here.
No.
Even in Denmark, in the south of Denmark, there's a wall, Dannevirke, that was built, and the historians don't even know why it was built. It's an enormous wall,
Yeah.
basically keeping Germany out of Denmark. There's a part of Denmark connected to Germany. It's called Jutland, and basically you build a wall all the way over that part. There's a marsh area as well where you don't have to need a wall, but and the historian says, well, we don't really know why this wall was built. Possibly this, but that wouldn't make sense with this, and so
Yeah.
it would be like this, but that wouldn't either make sense. So we don't know.
Yeah. At least they're honest and they don't make things up. Because saying I don't know is all right. But yeah, but then you've got to wonder, what histories are they working with? What archives are they trying to get the history from? Because like if Tartaria is real, fundamentally, everything academic history wise from the past, it's just not true. Because if Tartaria was a major geopolitical player and had involvement in the Crusades, like it's documented on the Royal Archives, Edward I, Edward the First, talking about an alliance with the Tartars. You've got Edward's son requesting his father's help in defending against the Tartars. These are documents in the Royal Archives dated from the 13th century. You've got communication from the Tartars to the King of England.
Mm.
So these are people that was entwined geopolitically with the ruling powers of the world, and if they did they did do the Crusades, if they were the defenders of Christendom, if they were the real Israelites, this is major historical information all of us should know about. This is fundamental aspects of our origins on Earth. This is a major part of who we are. You
In
know,
particularly when we are also witnessing a genocide being televised to
again, yeah,
all of us, taking humanity out of us, forcing us to see a genocide. United Nations can't do anything. Flemming, you can't do anything. Jordan, you can't do anything. We can just watch a genocide going on in the place that was given
yeah,
by Balfour who was an accomplice of these Rhodes and Milner group, and was forming the world back then.
But even
So
then, with the Balfour Declaration, that was
this territory.
Continue there, Flemming.
Yeah, sorry. This territory might be something, different from what we are actually being told, and what we are being told. Every historian in the world today who is not getting sniffed as a conspiracy theorist is basing his knowledge on the Bible. Historically, everything is based on the Bible. If it doesn't fit into the biblical chronology, then it doesn't count.
We deduce what year it is. BC AD, before Christ, after death. Our whole yearly date calendar system is built on the Bible. It's a fundamental part of Western life. I don't know if that's what it's like in the East, but in the Western world, instead of having it as the origin of the world to now, which to me would seem like the most logical year. I mean, if it's the year 3000, to me, I'd have it like that myself. I've went on a bit of a tangent though.
And while you're gathering your thoughts again, I will just say that keep on posting in the chat. I am reading it at the same time as we are talking. Artemis Forest Ferry is writing here. History is a lie agreed upon, which is apparently is a quote by Napoleon, very central to what has happened in Europe. And
Paul even say in regards to Napoleon that he weren't even a real person. Have you heard that?
I certainly think that's a possibility that is true.
So who actually said this quote?
We've got Shakespeare as well. Star Monkey here is mentioning Circassians. Circassians. Star Monkey is also not sagas are fun. There's giants in there. He referring to a historical place. Go to Oxford. I want to see you wearing the golden fleece. Which I believe is the center of. Is it the Order of the Garter? I think, or might it be something to do with the Maltese order? I'm not sure. Check. Jane here says check Anatoly Fomenko timelines. A new chronology, maybe for timelines. 1,000 years were added by Joseph Scaliger in the 1500s. Which is what we've been discussing right now as well. Well, Rome and the RCC had Mother Night and the Albigensian Crusade can really kill a lot of people when focused. As Star Monkey as well. Well, it was the Kali Yuga Dark Ages. Probably don't want to remember most of it. World Fairs officially started in 1851. Crystal Palace, London. Jesuits did some sabotaging as well. There's records regarding the U.S. West and flooding communities out. Jesuits are the military arm of the Church, Catholic Church. I've got no love for Rome, if you can tell. That's Star Monkey going on a bit of nearly what we called around here. Shift happens, or Steph Peters is writing, Jesus was the beginning of this 1,000 years of glory, question mark. It's been uncovered in Turkey and Armenia, all caves and tunnels. Francis Leader, good to see you here, Francis. Francis been an activist and posing questions all throughout her life. Is very, very inspiring to hear Francis Leader's personal story. Francis is mentioning here the defensive slots of the Great Wall of China are pointed at China. So who really built that wall. I've heard that argument as well, that it's not a uni directed wall.
Well, it is true. I mean, if you look at it, the turrets are facing toward China, as if it would be defending against China. All great points, you know.
Yeah. So we've talked about the timeline. We've talked about the maps. Tartary actually equals what we today call Inner Asia or Central Eurasia. The documenting and proofs of this historical empire called Tartary and Tartaria. This is where you are uncovering crazy things. You've already mentioned CIA archives, NSA, the Royal Archives. What's it called? The Royal Society archives in Britain. The correspondence between kings back in the 14th, 15th, 17th century. All these letters and all these documents. They're not pointing towards the history that we're being told in the history books. They're pointing towards Tartaria, which was a vast empire and not a golden or horde of the steppes of Mongolia. No,
it's been significantly downplayed and altered. You know, barbarians, yeah.
So
who killed that many men, apparently. He managed to lower the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Now, that might sound pretty cool.
Say that again, John.
And I remember learning this in school, but we got told that Genghis Khan, right, the Mongol king, apparently, when he killed that many people, he lowered the carbon dioxide level in the atmosphere. Now, 13-year-old me for 25-year-old me thinks, what a load of crap. How would they even know that in the 13th century? You know? Furthermore, why would they even know that? You know? It seems more so that Genghis were quite a wise man, you know? You can't unite the disparate tribes of Asia if you're just a madman, you know? That these people wanted, perhaps they wanted unity and he give them the opportunities for unity. Well, that's what's documented. It seems like, I don't know where I'm going with that. I'll try to pull something out of the ether, but I had nothing there.
The documenting you do in your post when there's travelers traveling through Chinese Tartary or through Tartary, because there was times when the Chinese Empire or Chinese territory was occupied by Tartary, and the other way around as well. This is something we know throughout history, that empires push each other back, take each other over, and the power.
Well, it seems what happened with China is, I think it's about the year 1400. The Tartars conquered China, but from what's more had China tribute to them. They was in control of China, but they let it be as it was, and it was more a partnership rather than Tartary taking over China, because it's noted in a diary from a sergeant major, and this is in the Royal Archives as well. Sergeant Major's trip to Tartary for the embassy of Lord Macartney.
That was so interesting, that account.
That was in... Pardon?
That was so interesting, that that post you made about this sergeant major, how he describes everything, and you can just imagine a military sergeant major seeing what he is seeing with his eyes, describing it with his eyes.
Because he mentions, about the wall. He says that it's not being looked after now because the Tartars and China have a partnership. So there's no need to keep taking care of the wall because it doesn't, which was to protect against the Tartars 1,500 years ago, 200 AD.
That was common knowledge at that time.
Yeah, but he also notes in his diary that the information comes from the highest Chinese dignitaries. He hasn't just gone and asked the Joe public what's going on. It's a sergeant major coming to Tartary on an embassy, Lord Macartney's embassy from England. He's being treated like nobility, and he's asking the history. How would they get it wrong? They live there. This is their history. They're telling him their history, and they're quite proud to tell him. By the sounds of his account of it all, it does sound like such. You can almost picture it, can't you? Walking through the streets with his diary, writing things down. It's magic when you think about it. And I bet he never thought that in 100 years, 200 years, people would be like, this place never existed. So,
I was yeah.
I'm going to say, if Palestine gets erased today, in 100 years, 200 years' time, people are going to be discussing, was Palestine a real place? Like we're discussing, is Tartaria a real place? Nothing's changed. This happens again and again. There's probably more countries, more empires that we don't know about. Maybe not to this height and scale, because I'm sure it'll be cleared by the historical record. But yeah, it's incredible.
I was in when I was a soldier. I was in Cyprus doing a UN tour as a sergeant in the military police, and I met with a lot of English servicemen, and I know a sergeant major. I mean, a soldier is more fearful of a sergeant major or anything because a major is the oldest of all the real soldiers. He's not an officer. He's a non-commissioned officer. He has worked very hard to get to the point of becoming the highest ranking non-commissioned officer you can get. So to hear a sergeant major's account of what he is seeing traveling through Tartary, it's an amazing post, and I wish for anybody who's interested in the subject of Tartary to revisit or visit that post of yours. I think it's approximately 1 week old from now.
I think it's called. I think that's what I called it. Something like that.
Say that again.
I think the article's called "The Diary of a Sergeant Major" or something like that.
Yeah, I think that could be true. Freedom of religion. All the non-biblical history of knowledge has been erased. Abrahamism, that's the point here, seems to have taken over the world in one way or another. The civilization of Tartary and ancient Egypt erased with all their wisdom. Exactly. Star Monkey comes back here. I was referring to the lamp planet. Oh, sorry. I was referring to the lamp plant Jordan had a post on, which is supposedly at Oxford. Terasu Sola mentions here, history has always sounded odd to me, and Tartaria makes so much makes sense. Shift happens. Archaic proposes that it could be Roman design, but did the Romans inherit something older? And I think definitely that's the point. These empires, the Roman empires, was just a continuation of the Greek Empire. It was just a continuation of the Trojans Empire, and it was a continuation of the Phoenician empire. Remember, the Greeks empire and the Phoenician empire existed along many centuries, and eventually the Roman Empire came out of that. In particular, when Carthago was leveled with the earth back in 147 before our timeline. The moneyed psychopath in control control us with religion. That has definitely been the truth for at least 15, if it is 1500, for the last 15, 1600 since the time of the first Bible. Remember, the first Bible is canonized in the 5th century, and only after we've got the Jewish Torah and Tanakh and the Quran, and these are all Jewry and Islam and Christendom. They are all Abrahamic or Abrahamism. They are religion that goes back to Abraham and the circumcision ritual, and that sort of brings us into the last subject of today, which incidentally also is your favorite topic, at least for now.
Yeah, it's the most profound one, and I must say, when I first read the very first reference I found, I thought, this means something. This is an important piece of information. And then the more I read, the more I find, and then it just seems it just adds such a complex couple threads to the whole story, you know what I mean? But then it makes sense, what is the ferociously, relentlessly, and keep this charade up for all these years? What could they possibly have? What could possibly need to be obscured? Well, if they were one of the tribes that were led off by Salmanessa, the true Israelites, then the group we have claiming to be the true Israelites now wouldn't really have any ground to stand on, would they? So then, I mean, and we've seen what extent these people go. Suicide, all this. They'll go to incredible lengths to get what they want. So, what's a race and an empire? I mean, it's documented. Look at the CIA files. Indoctrinated books, taking the books out of the libraries. This is documented in the CIA files and the NSA files. They've written accounts in the Soviet declassified files, but they openly admit to in the books. It's written proof. It's just there to find. And when one of these documents on its own means nothing. But when you look at all the historic books, you look at the CIA files and everything else, and you put all this together, it's just absolutely undeniable that these people have been erased, It's undeniable they've been erased just by looking in the CIA reading room, It's pretty clear, I mean, in one of the CIA, a rewrite of Tartar history, That's what it says. It says that. How else can you misinterpret that? It says falsified Tartar history, I think, if I've got my words right there, but it's, falsified Tartar history. What else does that mean?
Why would the CIA help the Russian Soviets to erase that people out of the Russian history? That's gotta make some people ask some questions about our interpretation of power and history throughout the last, and that's only we're talking 100 years back into not even.
It's not that long ago. The Bolshevik Revolution. Not many people have even heard of it.
No,
but this is one of the most heinous genocides in known history.
Yeah,
Far surpassing the deaths in the modern War II. You know, even the exaggerated numbers that we get told, it surpasses even the exaggerated numbers, you know? So who were these people? Why did they all have to die, you know? What were the history of these people? You never really knew that when you look at the modern narrative of the Bolshevik Revolution. But when you look at the historical record, hang on a sec, were all these people Tartars? Were they keepers of a history that they didn't want to be released? The Bolshevik Revolution. And I mean, when you look at the Soviet files, it's clear that the Tartars were one of the primary targets of the Bolsheviks, you know? It's noted down that they were a priority. And then when World War II goes off, we've got Hitler and the Reich focusing on trying to enlist Tartars because they know that Russia is
He's
degrading
trying
their history, trying to take their history. So they know
to
that
entice them.
to defect. And this is noted in the CIA files that Germany and the Third Reich were trying to enlist Tartars, you know? And this is just incredible information. So we've got from in history in the 15th, 16th century, we've got such a rising power all over Asia. And then it fast forwards to the early modern world. And the people's global stature is nowhere near as large as it was, but still at the high had programs to specifically procure these people from the Russian front lines, you know? And by all accounts, it seems that many Tartars did join them. They weren't successful in the end. But it just shows that there's much more going on to this. You know, when I first discovered Tartaria, I never thought the Tartars would have been involved in World War II. You know, never did that cross my mind. But then there's another CIA file, and this one is one of my discussing the Tartar, a Panzer tank division that is primarily Tartars from the Blitzkrieg. You know, it's
Crazy.
just incredible. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. You've
so
still got, yeah.
go on. Sorry, I'll let you go on.
You've still got today an oblast or a republic called Tatarstan,
Yeah,
which capital is Kazan. It's lying on the Volga River. Volga being the biggest river in Europe
the
or
major
Eurasia.
city for Tartaria.
And you've got Dagestan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, all
Turkestan.
Turkestan, all these places with a huge, rich history
Mm,
of the Tatar, where even the language were
yeah.
a thing as well. And unfortunately, I wonder why we don't have any written Tatar documents to base anything on. Why is that?
Well, it's part of the great falsification of Tartar history, as noted in the CIA files. I mean, if you're going to erase the peoples and the history and change the history, everything has to go. They can't have their own language. That's got to go. If they can't get rid of it, it gets labeled something else. Let's call this Tartar language. Let's call this Arabic, for example.
Mm.
So nothing goes. It just gets relabeled. Time you don't know where it come from. Is that the true reality? We don't know.
That's interesting.
You know. So it might not be a case of things have been removed and destroyed. It might just be a case of things have been relabeled, like the Mongols, the word Tartars. But
Mm.
that's just blatantly not true when you actually do the research. I think the people that tell me to read the history books, so I'll learn that Tartaria weren't real. I don't think these people have actually read the history books themselves, because the history books,
They never fit together. The
no,
different eras don't fit together when you start studying this. I mean, I couldn't give a fiddler's fart about history for until a couple of years ago.
yeah, yeah, same. I didn't like it in school.
but how can you like something that didn't make sense? You
Yeah,
take errors and make a small box here and call that the Roman antique area, and small box here and call that the very
makes
dark
sense.
ages, and and they're not connected. And
Yeah,
Viking, and then when you start looking into these different eras and looking into the timeline, just the last two millennia, you start seeing that what was called the Middle Ages in Denmark was not called the Middle Ages in England, and it was different in Italy, and it was very different in Palestine. So how come our timelines, across
so
borders,
yeah,
doesn't
so
doesn't
different.
fit each other?
It's bizarre.
It's very bizarre. There's a few more comments here. Uh, Francis Leader mentions Marco Polo. He did not see the Great Wall of China. The brick and stone fortification was largely constructed during the Ming Dynasty from 1368 to 1644, which began after Marco Polo's visit to China in the 13th century under the Mongol Yuan dynasty. Any comments to that, Jordan?
I've got nothing to comment about it really. I mean, I've not read a lot of Marco Polo's work. I've read the soul work that he's done, bits of it. But I
If
mean, it's an interesting fact to know. Thank you, Francis.
yeah, because he definitely becomes he's inside your criteria for research, because
Yeah,
you,
well, I'd
you want.
say a lot of Asia is largely based on Marco Polo's work. And people say to me, they say, look at Marco Polo's work and it'll show you that the Tartars weren't real. But again, you just look at the book and it just doesn't, quite the contrary. It speaks about the Tartars in immense detail and the Mongols separately. So the one source that they claim disproves it all, proves it all, you know. But the modern narrative has just took a few bits, they've changed this bit round, we've altered that bit, and you know, just if you read his book, well, don't take my word for it, don't take your word for it, just read the book, and you'll see that the basis of Western Chinese history, from Western interpretation of Chinese history, is based on the work of Marco Polo and a few others. But it just seems that they must have glanced at his book and thought, we'll use a bit of it and we'll make up rest.
I think where your arguments are very strong is in that you put the reference, and you put copies of the original French, English, or other language documents, and your translation into English of them, and then your commentary of them. I think you
Yeah,
should keep. I think you should keep that modus operandum, because that's, to me at least, very convincing way of
presenting
presenting.
the information. Yeah.
Yeah. So Jane Evershed here is mentioning, if Putin had not released the maps of Tartaria in 2013, we would still be in the dark. I'm not sure about that, but that's of course your argument, Jane. Hans is mentioning Tartaria is not just a global civilization, the successor of Hyperborea, but a way of life in resonance with the greater cosmos, nature, and the source. Read more on disclosurenews.it. Funnel the great quantum transition. Lev. Then Ahmed Terasu, my grandmother, born in 1900, said they were erasing Tartaria. That's interesting. Star Monkey, again here, not Sagas of the Caucasus by John Colorusso. He translates from what will point in that direction to one of the early arguments Star Monkey has made here. And Francis Leader with the last comments here. Yes, Marco Polo knew about the region and people he referred to as Tartars, but the term Tartaria as a distinct geographical entity was a later European cartographic convention that evolved from his accounts.
I think if that was true, then Tartary wouldn't be mentioned in can't remember, the Wu Ming She, I think it's called. It's a 13th century Chinese manuscript on the history of China, and in that document it contains the word Tartar, Tata, which translates as Tartary. Well, the translator of that document in English puts the word. So, did you see the article I wrote about that, the Chinese name for Tartaria?
I think I've seen it, but I'm not sure.
Key one. It's a key one because a lot of people tell me that it's all the work of the Europeans' confusion all through time. But not only have we got European historic books, we've got Eastern historic books, Armenia, which was in the East. We've got a great history there. Yeah, like I was saying, the Chinese, a lot of people said to me, if Tartaria were real, then it would be in the Chinese history. And I never really spent too much time looking into it because it's one of the hardest languages for me to translate with the tools I have accessible to me. And a lot of the time, say if a book's in Latin, German, French, I know what the word Tartaria looks like. So I can scroll through a French book, even though I don't read French, looking for the word and, oh, there's Tartaria, I'll translate this page. Can't do that with Chinese because like I said, I think I'm right in saying the word. I might have pronounced it wrong, but I think it's the Wu Ming She. One of my recent articles. But in the translation from Chinese to English, is listing the provinces of before you get to China, and as he's listing them, he lists Tartar in brackets Tartary, and this is a verified, an established English translation of this Chinese and published, and that Tartary translation is a part of that text, then that's been accepted as true as well, you know. So it is in Chinese history. And now I know what the word in Chinese is, and I know it's in the Wu Ming She. This weekend actually, I'm gonna look through the book, try and find the relevant page, and find the actual Chinese character for the word Tata. So then once I've got this character, Flemming, game over. Game over. Because then I can search all the Chinese I mean, once I've got the Chinese history and the Chinese proof of it, then what? You can't deny it anymore,
You're a man on a mission.
I'm a man on a mission, and I know what I'll find. I know what I'll find, Flemming.
And occasionally, you take a break. And which coffee is your favorite brand?
At the moment, I'm a man of many coffee beans at the moment, Flemming. I haven't got a favourite. I've got one I can't remember, and it tastes like Turkish delight.
You know what I'm talking about, don't you? Because when
the cat poo coffee. Yeah, I've run out now.
Okay, it's quite expensive.
It is quite expensive. I
What was
bought it just to try it for once, but yeah, it's an acquired taste. It's rather strong.
Luwak or Kupa Luwak or what was it?
Kopi Luwak.
Kopi Luwak.
Yeah.
And that's actually coffee beans being eaten by a cat and coming out the other end and then drunken by
And poos out, which is a coffee bean. And then some poor people have to go around picking up this coffee poo, clean it, dry it, roast it, drink it. But yeah, it's
you
a
also,
taste.
to make up for that, you also eat a lot of ginseng.
Yes. Not every day, but every other day, ginseng tea. And I mean, I credit it. I don't eat a lot, I don't have breakfast. I have 4 or 5 boiled eggs for my dinner with a bit of salt, proper salt. Like. And then for my tea, I just have veg, soup, or I'll have beef, just beef mince on it. So we're going on a tangent here. We started about Tartaria, and I'm telling you what I'm having for my tea.
I've been living in Ireland. A cup of chai.
Irish beef. Yes, lovely.
Thank you, Jordan, for taking your time, and thank you for sharing.
Thank you for having me here. I'll be honest with you, Fleming, there's not a lot of people in my life that enjoy talking to me about this sort of thing. And confident on the chart. I'm just grateful I have someone to talk to.
Yeah, I know how that feels like. Great talking to you. There's a lot of people. There's actually 57 joined right now in this live call. There's a lot of good comments. It's great that there's this interest. I think most people can figure out why it is interesting to understand that we have been lied to about possibly the biggest empire for the last two millennia. So let's keep up the good work, and let's make a new appointment not too far in the future.
Yeah.
And keep your coffee brewer steaming, and your
I'm
work.
gonna make another one after with my 200-year-old cup nearly.
Great talking to you, Jordan. Thanks a million.
It's always great with you, Fleming. Thank you.